This Easter, skip the ordinary and whip up something golden with melty, creamy Velveeta cheese. From scalloped potatoes to rich mac and cheese, Velveeta turns every bite into a crowd-pleasing celebration, bringing the extra to the ordinary, transforming simple sides into lip-smacking, satisfying moments. So go on, make it melt, make it craveable, make it indulgent. Velveeta, respect the drip. Visit Velveeta.com/Easter for some recipe inspiration.
Welcome back to Cruising. This is Sarah Gabrielli, and today we are finally talking about softball. The Mary Vazquez Women's Softball League was founded in 1976 in Northampton, Massachusetts, a town in the Pioneer Valley often referred to as the lesbian capital of the world. The league was originally formed around really specific principles of feminism, accessibility, and inclusion. I'm talking about all of this today with a longtime player and former league commissioner, Bernie Stark. We break down the league's history and traditions, the impact of Title IX, Bernie's personal journey as a lifelong female athlete, as well as the more recent decision to officially welcome trans and genderqueer people into the league. As a frequent visitor of Western Massachusetts, I've been to a few Mary V softball games. That's where I first met Bernie and was welcomed warmly at their post-game drinks downtown. Before this interview, Bernie and I both brushed up on our league history with a 2008 documentary called In League With Us, which you'll hear us refer to throughout the interview, and it's also available on the free Internet Archive for anyone interested. And one last thing for anyone interested in our book, The Lesbian Bar Chronicles, you can still pre-order it anywhere books are sold or at cruisingpod.com/book.
Feel like Northampton is a sister city to Provincetown, which is a more well-known, I call it the Fire Island of New England. You know, it's a place where at the time a lot of gay people and families could go vacation and be out. And it was unusual in many ways because you could walk down the street holding your partner's hand. Even that alone was not something that many of us felt comfortable doing outside of these safe spaces or communities. And so I discovered P-Town when I was still in college. And I remember road tripping to Cape Cod to go to P-Town with some friends over the years. And through P-Town, I found out about Northampton, which was dubbed by the National Enquirer in 1992 as Lesbianville, USA.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the sign in the parking garage in Northampton says, welcome to Northampton, where the coffee is strong and so are the women. And I was like, okay, this is a cool place. I got to check this out. And so when I got the job and I came to live here, I found home immediately.
So that was the sign that you saw like when interviewing for the job or something
Yes.
like that? That's
Yes.
awesome.
Yes.
You're like, I fit right in here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this
Yeah.
place is pretty cool. We moved about the end of July of 2002, so softball season was already almost over at that point, and I found out about it in early 2004. So I reached out and said, I'm looking for a softball league, and I knew a little that, it's certainly some place where I could meet other people, especially other LGBT women, and find some community. But I didn't know the extent of the history and how the league was purposely founded, not just as a space to play softball, but to create that kind of community that our founders felt was needed. Some of the teams, because they're built around your social circle, which oftentimes can, involve coworkers and such. And so some teams tend to have a lot of people that are in one of the local universities. Our team had many lawyers on it. My partner's team, she's a social worker, had a lot of kind of social workers and therapists on it.
And that's such a part of the social world in this area, is like these pockets of vocations
Yeah.
that people, and I think it must have a lot to do with people filtering out of the schools. There's just like a long process of building up these circles in your like certain careers. I know a lot of people come from the Smith Social Work School too.
Yep.
That's why there's so many therapists here.
I think it was like 10 colleges and university in a very, very small area. So we do get a lot of students and a lot of people who come to this area for school and stay. And I think for a lot of people, the softball league is a part of that. I think people will come, they look for a softball league, they find it, and they're like, I'm home.
What do you know about the history of the league? There's a documentary about it that I know we both watched recently. The whole story is very cool because it's very intentional. I think it's founded in 76,
Yep.
right? With very much, as you're getting to, this idea of building community. It's not about being competitive softball players at all.
Right. You know, I'm as old as the league is, right? Because I was born in 1976.
Whoa.
So that's how it's very easy for me to remember how old the league is.
That's special.
So yeah, the league was founded in 1976, very much as a space for women to be able to display athleticism, whatever that looked like for them, together. And also to find community and be able to be themselves through the stage of softball and athleticism. And so there were many women at the time, we call them the pre-Title IX folks, who didn't have those opportunities that a lot of young girls and women have today to participate in sports from an early age. So many of them were similar to me in my early days, that we had this athleticism, this desire to be physically active and play softball or other sports, but there was really no place for us to be able to do that. Maybe there were some local leagues or church leagues, maybe there were some school teams, but those, because of their setting, were also fraught with the social connections of those environments, right? If you played in a church league, it's not necessarily something that's a space that may be conducive for you to being your authentic self.
So Title IX is passed in 72, I think. Can you just explain that concept for people that are like the younger audience that like obviously knows what Title IX is, but not necessarily what this like transition from pre and post really looks like?
Sure. So I think that's one of the ways to kind of measure the difference in how young girls grew up and their relationship with athletics and organized athletics was the pre and post Title IX generation. And so because the Title IX law was passed as part of the Education Amendments of 1972, the folks who were in elementary school, who were young girls, who were in high school and in college in 72 or even up to 76 and before, didn't have access to teams, to leagues, to spaces where they could train or develop their athleticism. And if they grew up in a household where being a tomboy, quote unquote, was not okay, where being athletic is not consistent with our idea of what being a girl is or feminine traits is, then you had to kind of suppress not only that part of yourself, but also, even if you didn't have access to the training, to the ability to play over and over, to develop those skills. And so in the league, you could tell there's a marked difference in the skill set of people who grew up playing softball post Title IX and people who didn't, pre-Title IX. And so for these folks who didn't have access to the training and the playing time and the community around sports that newer generations have, they said, well, it doesn't exist, so we're going to create it. You know, they created this league intentionally as a space where it said, we don't care how well you know how to play. We don't care what training you have or whether we win or lose. We don't keep standings. The goal is to come and do something that we all love, whatever that looks like.
And it's not just, it's so much more than them just like calling the league community and fun and maybe feminist. There's just all these ways that it seems like the people that founded it have tried to make sure that the integrity of the league like stays the way that you've described. And obviously now you are like an experienced ball player, right? There are plenty of people that actually are very good at softball that play. But originally you weren't allowed to know how to play. Like there were two rules, two ways to get on to the league when it first started. Right?
Yeah, you either had to know someone in the league who would bring you onto their team,
but specifically be a lover or partner, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, no, I don't know if it had to be specifically a lover or partner. I know, or was that the second? I thought
I
that was the
thought that was
second
the second rule, but the
Yeah.
first rule is that you had to not know how to play and want to know.
That's right. That's
So
right.
it's like you had to like truly be a rookie, or you had to be sleeping with someone
Right,
that was
right.
in the. And then they were saying in the documentary, like, people would try to sleep with us to get onto the league.
I did see that. That was before my time. I didn't experience that dynamic when I joined the league, but it was very funny to see that in the documentary, and it shows, it was a very insular community. And you remember at that time, not a lot of people felt comfortable being out. I mean, if this league were publicized at the time more broadly, and that facet of the league was publicized, you have to realize that people were at risk of losing their jobs. They were at risk of losing their family or being ostracized. So while the league was created intentionally as a public space, it wasn't necessarily something that was advertised in the way that it is today.
Yeah, I think they said there was like a tiny little newspaper
Yep.
line.
There's a little ad, a 2-line ad saying, want to play softball? Call this number.
Yeah, and I think it says like, want to play softball, period, fun, period.
Right.
Something like that.
Yes,
I was
very,
like,
very bare bones. Very bare bones.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, closeted lesbians like myself would probably look at that and their heads would explode. Like, oh, this is great. Someplace to play softball,
And then, do you remember the names of, I think it's like Jean is the first?
Yes, and that's part of the notes I have here.
Of course, you can look at.
Because I didn't know them personally, but I know Jean Grossholtz and Maryann Jennings were part of the group of women that organized the league. Pre-text message, pre-internet, pre-email, probably creating phone chains, to spread the word. So the league functions for about 4 or 5 years as a kind of collective. And then in 1981, Mary Vazquez stepped in and became the first commissioner of the league and was responsible for kind of centralizing some of the organization, but very much still, fostering the philosophy. And, to kind of go back to the rules, because I think that's one of the things
we got to talk about the rules.
Got to talk about the rules.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that really distinguishes our league. And I remember my reaction when I was told about some of the rules. And as I passed that on to people who came after me, just enjoying their same reaction, right? I'm of the generation that's like Title IX is just starting to really we're starting to see the effects in the schools, right? We're starting to see, there's more organized sports, girls teams at high schools and at colleges. And so when I got to high school, we had a girls softball team, so I was able to join and play there. So I had some experience with competitive organized play. And so I come to the league and somebody tells me, okay, one of the rules of the league is that you can ask the pitcher to slow down the pitch if it's going too fast. And I remember thinking, wait, what? I have never heard of that. I mean, that's kind of cool, but for me, I was like, no, let them pitch it as fast as they want. I got this, But for many others, that really was the difference in letting them be able to play and enjoy the game, I also remember when I first started playing, there was a woman who played first base in a wheelchair. I'd never seen or thought of anything like that. However we could get you in there to play, we'll get you in there to play. And so rules were made to accommodate different abilities and different experiences. That wasn't without its challenges, especially as more and more of the league was filled with people who had played for the majority of their lives, but still an incredible idea.
That was Denise Roy. Is that the right name?
Yes.
Yeah, so they have these Denise rules, which are like if Denise is playing first base, just about like tagging the bases.
Yep, as long as the ball is in her glove before the runner hits first, it's an out.
Yeah.
And I remember the way, they allowed her to bat, and then obviously you could have a pinch runner, and anyone in the league can have a pinch runner. That's another rule, right? If maybe you have some health issues, or maybe, you're not super fast and you want to hit, but you don't really know how to run the bases or want to run the bases, you can have a pinch runner run for you. So those kinds of accommodations were definitely made.
Yeah. Are they things that come up in playing? Obviously, Denise isn't still playing, but like, are people still talking about like, you have to wear clothes? You're allowed to hug the third base runner if you want to. Like, that was a whole story in there.
That was that was amazing. Yes, they're very much still the clothes one. I remember that story when I first joined the league. People were still talking about that rule, and I remember when I started the Left Sox in 2005, I get to go to the team rep meetings and looking over the rules and saying, why do we have a rule about having to wear clothes on? Isn't that understood? Oh, apparently not. And if there's one thing I learned from my products liability class in law school is that if there's a rule about something, it's there for a reason. It's probably because something happened. So I was very intrigued by that story. It's not a rule we've had to discuss or enforce much lately. But definitely, you can still ask the pitcher to slow down. You can use pinch runners. You can absolutely pat your teammate on the back or give him a hug.
So that's a thing that I'll just explain, which is that like a runner was called out because the third base coach, I think, just gave a little like pat
was
as they
patting
were
them on the
running by.
back, and that could be seen as pushing the runner towards home.
Right.
Which is interference.
Right.
So they called them out.
Basically, in response to that, there was a rule that like you can do that.
Yes.
You can definitely hug the person at third, like in congratulations. Or
yes.
Something like that.
Absolutely.
You're like, we're not that competitive.
Right.
Shutting that down.
Right. That umpire, made the right call under the ASA, American Softball Association rules. Not under the Mary V rule. So we made sure that there was a rule to address it. And, I have to say, some of my favorite memories in the league are with people who have never played before. And I have to show the story that comes to mind on my team. That first year, 2005, we had a woman that had never played any organized sports, softball, baseball, basketball, any. But she found out about the league. She was a local student, and she was looking for community and a space to try, something like that felt safe. And I remember it was the last game of that season, and she was playing right field, which, right field is the spot where a lot of newer players will play because less balls get hit to that area generally. So she was playing right field, and she caught a ball. Now, our entire team, now that wasn't the last inning. That wasn't the last out of the inning. There were still people on base. And I remember when she caught that ball, our benches cleared. We all ran out onto the field. She was holding the ball like I caught it. We were hugging her, celebrating. The runners from the other team were still running around the bases and scoring runs, and we just didn't care because in that moment was about her and what she had accomplished over the course of a season. It's one of my favorite memories in this league.
I have chills right now. That's so sweet. Oh really? My gosh. Some of the anecdotes that are in the film, is it like lore in the league to hear about like this rivalry between the Hot Flashes and what's the other team? The
Common
Women. And these games where they would like all dress in costume.
Yes.
Is that something you already knew about?
Yes. Some of it I knew because the history had been passed down, but also because some of those traditions existed and still exist to this day. So we still have some teams in our league that are part of those very, very early teams. You could tell by their names. So No Nukes of the North, this is one of the founding teams of the league. They're called No Nukes today, but they're still around. Resistors is another team that had been around for some time. Red Scare, you can kind of get a sense of the time based on some of these team names.
Time capsules.
Yes, yeah. Right. Women Rising, I remember when I started, the Resistors were known for playing the last game of every season in dresses. And when I say dresses, I mean like prom dresses, tiaras, some, wraparounds. I mean, they went all out. We always looked forward, and I think people would go even if they weren't playing to that last game of the year because it was one of the wonderful traditions of our league to watch them play. And the story around why we have a clothes are mandatory rule, that's certainly something that has been passed down with great amusement. There was a game, and I think it was it Common Woman? that may have done it, but it was a very, very hot day. And some women decided, it's too hot to wear this sweaty shirt. I think I'm going to take that off. And then others followed. And I think that there were some people, family and friends who were at the game that maybe saw that and maybe, had some concerns around women playing half naked. And so they decided to institute a rule about it. That's my understanding of what happened.
It's such a funny rule, and it's also like the one that I like disagree with the most almost,
Yes. I think now I wonder if we're bound by some of the city ordinances
Probably.
around that. But aside from that, I think I could see what you mean, right? It's like, hey, I'm hot,
Men could probably play shirtless, I would guess.
Yeah. And I can't believe I'm this far into the interview before I mentioned this, that one of my favorite league traditions is at the end of every game, you do a cheer, which in and of itself is not unusual, except that you're cheering the other team. You never cheer for your own team. And usually that cheer involves a rhyme or some kind of words of appreciation that you yell out to the other team. They reciprocate, and then you go down and do the high fives down the line at the end of the game. And very often, after games, teams go out to dinner together, or they'll go do something, or we'll order pizza at the field and everyone kind of partakes. The other thing about our league is that if you come to a game and you're short on a number of players and the other team has a lot of extra players, then you just go over and you play for the other team. That creates kind of a fun dynamic and rivalry, and and people who do that play hard for the team they're playing for. The other thing, and I know I'm totally going off topic now, but this year one of the things that the league did was there's a local group of cheerleaders in the area known as the queer leaders. They come and they'll cheer at sporting events and things like that, and it's just that incredible way to build community around not only the identity, but in a space that's really always meant to be affirming and accessible.
They talk in the documentary about the woman Jean, who really was the first person to found this being so core to defining this ideology and like enforcing her values. And a lot of these rules exist because they realize that you can't just like expect everyone to hear the words that it's a non-competitive feminist league and actually embody that. And so then that's why all these rules need to like kind of just make sure that continues to happen. I know that at one point, I'm not sure if this is when you were commissioner or not, but at one point the transgender debate comes to a head, right? When was that?
It had started around 2010, 2011, where people started mentioning. I mean, transgender players have always played. My understanding is that they've always played in the league, whether they were out or not, whether it was pre or post any kind of medication or surgery or anything like that. Is the identity, folks who identified as transgendered have always played in the league. But it was really around 2010, 2011 that team reps started mentioning, and it started becoming an issue. And so I was commissioner at the time, and it became apparent to me that we needed to address it, because there were some complaints coming in from folks who were saying this is a women's league. It was very intentionally created to be a space for women. And they couldn't understand why someone who wanted to identify as male wanted to play in the women's league, and what that did in terms of strength, skill level, and the discussion about having this women-only space. And it was something that was very emotionally fraught for a lot of people in the league. And I found, and this is completely anecdotal, but I found that it tended to be across generational lines, where the older players, whether pre-Title IX or not, players who were very, very intentional around creating this women-only space, were saying, well, this isn't about excluding transgender players or male players. This is around preserving the history of the league and the identity as a women-only space. And newer players or younger players who were coming into the league, whether they were post-Title IX or whether they grew up with just a very different understanding of gender identity, of the difference between biological sex and gender identity, sexual orientation and gender identity. And for many of them, they saw this very much as a civil rights issue. As why would a feminist league created to provide community, to provide a space for people of all abilities and backgrounds to play this game we all love, why would that league seek to exclude anyone, especially someone that identified as a woman? And so it was I understood the thought process behind both sides of the argument, and wanted to try to address the issue in a way that everyone felt heard. And being the feminist collectivist organization that we are, I said, well, let's have a meeting where we all kind of come together and have a space where we can discuss it. And so I remember created this committee, two women who played in the league, Erin Vazquez, who's a professor of law at Western New England College at the time, School of Law, and Chris Newhall, who's also a professor. The two of them agreed to work on a policy that would be presented to the league, discussed and debated, and voted on to see what our league would do with this issue. That was organized and held we held a meeting around October of 2013. The proposed policy was sent to all the team reps, and they were to have discussions among themselves. And then anybody who wanted to come to this town hall meeting, which was held at the Florence Community Center, could come and discuss it. And I remember Pat Griffith, who is a professor at UMass and who is in the documentary, she was one of the folks who played in the league in its early days, was asked to facilitate the meeting. It was a very long meeting. It was extremely well attended because this is an organization that meant so much to so many women. And I do believe that we were successful in creating a space where everyone could express themselves, and maybe there could be an understanding of where each person was coming from in terms of their views. As a result of that meeting, the league voted to adopt the policy, which essentially said if you identify as a woman enough to want to play in a women's softball league, then you can play. And if you were born biological woman, even if you were no longer biologically female or didn't identify as such, but you still felt enough of an affinity and a connection to that side of yourself to want to play in a women's league, then you can play. I mean, at the end of the day, it was really like nobody's checking. So, if you feel enough that you want to be a part of and identify with this community to play, and that you're willing to uphold the values of the community, then you can play. And I was very happy to see that that was the result of that conversation. But to be honest, we lost a few people who didn't quite understand. They thought that we were kind of destroying this space that was really meant to be for women only.
I mean, it's so sad for those women that
Mhm.
left. It's like it did get destroyed for them. Like they
Mhm.
made sure that it actually was destroyed for them.
Mhm.
Because I'm sure that the integrity is exactly the same as it's always
Yeah.
been. Yeah.
Mhm.
But it's very cool that that is the policy. It feels ahead of its time a little bit for
I
you
think
guys.
so. I mean,
Yeah.
unfortunately, we're still having this debate in so many other parts of our society, country, and our world. But it was early days, I think, and as much as the outcome, it was really about the process that kept us true to our roots, right? We wanted it to be a space where everyone could express their views in a respectful, safe space where views were heard, considered, debated, and engaged in decision making that was very democratic, and we were able to do that. So I think that was true to our values. Sometimes people think that the league is a lesbian only league or an LGBT only league, and it's never been advertised as such. I do think that the majority of the folks who play in our league have some sort of LGBT identity or connection, but in my mind, it's always meant to be incredibly inclusive. And so we have straight women, we have transgender women, we have women of all backgrounds who play in the league, and I think that's for me that's carrying on the legacy of what the league was meant to be in our social setting and also in terms of accessibility to sports. And I think that I was the longest serving commissioner of the league, and I think that was one of the most important things to me, making sure that carried through. And when I left in 2022 and handed the reins over, that's one of the things that I talked about with the new commissioners, making sure that whatever happens with the growth of the league and the skill set and the players, that's something that remains first and foremost. That's really the legacy of the women who founded this league. That's their legacy. And the fact that it's going strong and adapting is just wonderful. And, the pre-post Title IX debate is less and less now, as almost everyone who's in the league now has played. But it doesn't mean that goal of making the league accessible to everyone needs to go away. And I think that's something that will carry on. And that distinguishes us from many other leagues.
Yes, online shopping is quite literally at our fingertips, but that doesn't mean it's always simple to buy. Whether it's trying to remember one of a million different logins so you can actually place your order, or getting almost all the way through checkout before realizing your card is nowhere near you, there are many hiccups that can get between you and placing that order. Which is why it's such a relief when you see that purple pay button that has all of your information saved, making checkout as simple as a tap of your screen. That iconic purple Shop Pay button is why Shopify has the best converting checkout on the planet, meaning less carts going abandoned and more sales going to you. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names like Thrive Cosmetics, Gymshark, and Allbirds, to brands just getting started. And they're not just great at converting sales. If people haven't heard about your brand yet, Shopify can help you find your customers with easy-to-run email and social media campaigns. And they have world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. Tackle all of those important tasks from one place, making your life easier and your business operations smoother. See less carts go abandoned and more sales go with Shopify and their Shop Pay button. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/realm. Go to shopify.com/realm. That's shopify.com/realm.
Nothing brings people together quite like Team USA at the Olympic Winter Games. From NBC Universal's iconic storytelling to the innovative technology across Xfinity and Peacock, Comcast brings the Olympic Games home to America, sharing every moment with millions. When Team USA steps onto the world stage, people aren't just watching, they're cheering together. This winter, everyone is all on the same team. Comcast, proud partner of Team USA.
Zootopia 2 has come home to Disney+.
Let's go!
Get ready for a new case.
We're the greatest partners of all time!
New friends.
Gary the Snake.
And your last name?
The Snake.
Dream Team. New habitats.
Zootopia has a secret reptile population.
You can watch the record-breaking phenomenon at home. Zootopia 2, now available on Disney+, rated PG. And right now you can get Disney Plus and Hulu for just $4.99 a month for 3 months with a special limited time offer. Ends March 24th. After 3 months, plan auto-renews at $12.99 a month. Terms apply.
Faraday presenta Ojos con Alergia y Picazón contra el Jardinero. Y el ganador es Faraday Extra Fuerte. Para aliviar la picazón de los ojos por alergia, actúa más rápido y supera a Claritin y Flonase aún a las 24 horas. Faraday, adelante.
Well, it all starts in Brooklyn, New York.
Really?
Yeah, that's where I was born and raised. For anyone who knows what growing up in Brooklyn at the time was like, baseball was a really big part of community play. It was certainly a big part of my identity. Very much what they called in those days a tomboy. So I would be often playing stickball or baseball or stoop ball or any variation of that with the neighborhood kids, usually boys. I was very often the only girl. And when I was young, there were no girls' teams in my area that I could really join or really work on skills. So I really just grew up playing on the streets with the fellow neighborhood kids. And it was really until I got to high school that there was a team that was available for me to join. And really, that was the first time I played softball. This was about 1990. I started playing in high school. I remember getting into some we'll call them debates with my mother around why I was always playing with, the neighborhood boys and why didn't I play with the girls, or why baseball? Why not, going shopping or something else?
And this is probably like the 80s, right? Where
Yep.
you're starting to experience this kind of thing. Like,
Yep.
do you have specific memories of realizing you were in a different situation than the boys that you were trying to play with?
I do actually. There's one particular memory. I remember in my elementary school, they didn't have really a lot of organized sports teams. They didn't have any for girls. And one of the PE teachers wanted to get together just a group of kids who were interested in playing baseball. And so after school, they would meet and we'd just play, for an hour or two. I would go, and I was the only girl. And my mom found out about it and found out that I was the only. She knew I was doing it, but when she found out I was the only girl, she stopped me. She said, "No, you really can't go and do that anymore." And I couldn't understand why. It really, really bothered me. And so I'd ask, why? Why can't I go? I'm like, I'm better than all the boys. I hit the bar farther. Why can't I do this, which I enjoyed so much? And well, she's like, I don't want you to be the only girl there. And I was like, I don't understand why. And I remember at the time, my version of talking back to my mom, which I didn't do, was, well, I don't understand because I have different body parts. I can't play baseball. Like, I'm better than them. But she was adamant about it. So I think that was my first foray into understanding that kind of discrimination, for lack of a better word. And I also call it one of my first forays into feminism and trying to understand why I couldn't do this because of my biological sex. So I was very disappointed and was not able to play again until softball in high school, when there was an organized team of women and my parents were okay with that. And of course, they ended up being my biggest fans, coming to all my games and cheering me on.
So was it an ongoing thing between you and your mom, or even just like for your mom in general, of blinders on for like societal norms?
Yes, where my mom is now and where she was then are very, very different places. But at the time, she was very worried about me, what people would say, that people would make fun of me or tease me, and things that I didn't really care about. I knew what I loved to do, and I just wanted to be able to do it. But very much a part of an ongoing conversation throughout my life and my journey, both in terms of understanding who I was and having my mom kind of try to understand and come to terms with that.
Do you think that they sort of came around for the organized softball because it was a thing that other girls were doing, and that there was like almost an infrastructure for it, right?
I think it was more socially accepted.
Yeah.
Because of the infrastructure, because other girls were doing it, right? I wasn't the only girl in a group of boys, and what that probably represented for my mom. I think maybe at the time she was worried, oh, they're going to think you're a lesbian because you're the only girl playing with boys. And while she may have been right at the time, I wasn't thinking about sexual orientation. I wasn't thinking about any of that. I was thinking about, this is baseball. I love to play. Why can't I play?
So when did you start thinking about the like sexuality component of your identity?
That really wasn't until college.
Really?
Well, it really wasn't an option for me to be anything but heterosexual. Like, that was the presumption. I grew up in a very traditional Puerto Rican family where religion was very important. My parents were both in the military, so they were pretty socially conservative. And so there was no conversation around it. There was no ability to explore that. So I just kind of defaulted to heteronormativity, right? I just assumed, well, I'm straight. Everyone, is
that's what
straight,
people
right?
are,
Because that's what
right?
people
Yeah.
are, right? Unless they say otherwise. And no one I knew, no one in my family or my social circle ever said otherwise. It was something that, if it ever came up, was something to make fun of. It actually reminds me of a story where I was playing basketball with some of the local boys, and of course I was the only girl. And I remember was boxing out this young boy, and like, he went to take a shot, and I jumped up and I swatted it away, and he was so embarrassed because everyone else was like, "Oh, she did that," and he just kind of looked at me. He was like, "Butch." He said that. And I remember thinking, I don't even know what that means. You know, like I didn't get what he was saying or calling me. So I just, tough, man. And I just
Right.
kept playing. But it was really in college when I met people who identified as gay or lesbian that things kind of started clicking in my head. And looking back, I could see some things that made sense to, many Gen X lesbians, the crush that I may have had on Joe from The Facts of Life, and wow, she's really cool. She's my favorite character, things like that kind of, looking back, I was like, of course I was gay. It was the first time in my life I was allowed and encouraged to question things. That really wasn't something that I did before. But I remember even in some of the affinity groups that I participated in, it was not okay necessarily to be out as queer.
Wait, what do you mean affinity?
So like, I remember a particular instance where I would attend meetings for the Latin American Student Union, LASU, it was called, a group that was created around this Latino identity and culture. But within the culture, there is a lot of discrimination for queer folk. And I remember feeling like I had to be closeted in that environment. I didn't want anyone to know because of jokes that were made or comments that were made. So
It just created this kind of air of like, oh, I can't. You
yes,
can't be open about that here.
can't be open about that here.
Yeah.
And so I never felt like there was a space where I could be authentically myself. Until I think probably really until I moved to Western Massachusetts and softball leagues. And I'd always played softball from pretty much every summer of my life. I was either playing baseball or softball. Wherever I moved, I would find the local softball league. And really, that was one of the few spaces where I could be fully and authentically myself.
Yeah. I'm curious before we like move into that part of your life. But when you said that college was the first time that you could start thinking about this, what space was that in? Why did you say that?
I remember I had to do an assignment for a class pre-internet days, so I had to go to the stacks and find the books. And I remember, this is silly, but I remember coming across, do you know Alison Bechdel?
Of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so those the comics that she drew, I remember coming across those in the stacks. And I loved comics in general and graphic novels and stuff. So I was like, what is this? And I started looking through it, and I remember being just shocked and very intrigued. I was like, I'm just going to take these out and
For research purposes.
For research purposes, exactly. And I couldn't get it out of my head. It really got me thinking some of the similarities and analogies, like, wow, there's something about this that is extremely intriguing to me. And that happened to coincide with a time where I found myself extremely drawn to one of my classmates. Found myself constantly thinking about her and always wanting to be around her. Again, never really understanding that it was any kind of attraction until kind of I started thinking about it more, thinking about these books and thinking about this person that I really, really wanted to see all the time. And I remember, so I'm fluent in Spanish, and I found out that this person was going to be taking Spanish 101 the following semester, which met Monday through Friday at 8:30 a.m. And before that, I'd never taken a class before 10 because I like to sleep in. And I remember signing up for Spanish 101 because it would give me an opportunity to see this person every day.
So you were just like blowing everyone out of the water with your Spanish.
I would
like,
talk to the teacher in Spanish after the class.
Oh
and
my
she's like,
God.
Why are you taking this class? And I think I said something like, well, I think it's really important to reinforce some of the grammar and the skills, that I should know.
Did anything happen with that girl?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
that's great.
I think it paid off.
Really? Is there anything, are you able to talk about any of it?
Yeah, I mean, it was very exciting for me. And I remember, I had dated men prior to that, and there was something about this attraction that was different. And I remember when I finally we did kiss, and I remember when I kissed her for the first time, like literal fireworks, like just unlike any other kiss I'd ever had until that point. And that's kind of when the light bulb went on. I was like, oh, so much makes sense now. But it was a very, very exciting time in my young life, and also very unsettling because I was now struggling with this exciting new experience and these feelings that I wanted to explore more, but also coming up against what had been ingrained in me in terms of my faith and what's okay and not okay. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, this is crazy, but I was so drawn to it. I couldn't not explore that side of myself.
How does that kind of thing happen for the first time? How do you even begin to address the feelings that you're having with someone when it's so foreign and so...
Alcohol helped.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about alcohol. That will totally do that. I miss that about young alcohol, actually.
Right. And by that point, we had class. We had a bunch of classes together. We were spending a lot of time together. And we were in a group setting. And then eventually everyone left. And it was just the two of us. And I think the conversation just went to an area where I finally worked up the courage to ask her if she'd ever kissed another woman. And she was silent for a long time, and I could tell she was struggling with whether or not to answer that truthfully, whether or not to share that. Because remember, while this is the very early 90s, actually mid-90s, my apologies, mid-90s, and it was still nerve-wracking to be out and to know who you could trust with that information. And so I think she thought about it a long time. I guess she decided she could trust me, and she said yes. And I was like, okay, that's cool.
That's so exciting for you.
Yes, it was extremely exciting. I remember my heart was racing. And then she asked me, have you? And I remember thinking, okay, this is a good, I was like, this is a good opportunity to show my cards a little, And I remember I said, no, I haven't. But if I ever did, I would really like it to be you.
Oh, that's good.
I know. And then that kind of one thing led to another.
Yeah. Oh. So were you really connected to because you were saying something about your faith, right? Like it was sort of a religious debate for you?
Very much so. I grew up Catholic, and I loved my faith. And I still do. I still consider myself a person of faith. But I was young and didn't yet understand the difference between faith and institutionalized religion. And I think that was part of the journey for me. And I struggled with what my faith said was a sin and what I felt were genuine good feelings of affection. And so I had a really hard time with that. And, I think that's why it took so long between one kiss and anything, a relationship or anything more, because I had a hard time with that.
You can believe and hear so much and still know that this thing that you're experiencing isn't bad or negative. Right. It sounds like you kind of recognized this doesn't feel like a sin. Right? It feels good.
Right, exactly. I knew that inherently, I was a good person. I was a faithful person. I didn't do anything wrong. And it took me a while to accept that what I was feeling wasn't wrong. It was hard at the beginning. And I certainly couldn't speak to my family about it. So
when did you loop them into all this?
It wasn't until many years later when I was in grad school that conversation kind of started. And I didn't come out of the closet so much as I was dragged out of the closet.
Really?
Yeah, I think, people in my family were starting to ask questions and, just very, blunt and kind of to the point.
You're super dyke.
Yeah, you're super gay. What's going on?
Was it a long journey to getting to where your family's at now?
A bit, yeah, it was. It was really around my parents, especially my mom, who I was very, very close with. It was very, very hard for her to accept at first, and it was a long journey. But I think back, and I'm grateful for so many things. I'm grateful that because we had a lot of arguments and debates and really tough conversations, and I'm very grateful that I didn't cut her out and that she didn't cut me out. Like we were upset with each other. We didn't understand where the other was coming from necessarily, but we loved each other and we knew that not being in each other's life wasn't an option. And if that wasn't an option, then everything else would kind of come. It took hard work. It took a lot of tears. But because we knew we wanted to be in each other's lives always, we just kind of put ourselves in the situation where we had to come to a mutual understanding. And at first, it was very much a detente, so to speak. Like my mom was like, okay, you're gay. I don't really want to talk about it or, be around it too much. And then I got married and she came to my wedding, which was wonderful. I have a lot of friends who had a similar struggle with their parents whose family didn't come to their wedding or doesn't visit them or support them. And my mom did. And that said a lot to me because I knew that was very hard for her. And then once the grandkids were born, forget about it. I mean, at that point, my mom, who ultimately moved from Brooklyn to Western Massachusetts, and now she is absolutely surrounded by lesbians, like all of her service providers, many of my friends, and she just loves them all. So she's pretty much an honorary lesbian, and is very much an active part of my community.
Was it to be by you and the kids?
Yes. I grew up with my grandmother and my great-grandmother living with me, and it was just such a huge part for me of my family experience, of my childhood, and I wanted that for my kids. And my mother had been wanting grandkids for a while, and there was no way she wasn't going to be close to them. So I think having the grandkids was what did it and what brought my mom to the area. She absolutely loves it here now. She loves all the wonderful lesbians in her life, and she's getting older, and it gives me help having friends and family in the area who can check in on her.
And lesbians are so helpful.
We really are.
Right?
We really are. We're such caretakers.
Yeah.
So she's surrounded. She has no choice but to love us all.
Yeah. Does she go to the games?
Yeah. Even though I'm not by any means her baby anymore, it's still amazing to hear my mom, go Bernie, in the background.
And your wife plays also.
Yeah, so my wife, who's my ex-wife now, but it's all good.
Wait, that is the person that we went out.
No, that's my new partner.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, you did meet my new partner. No, that's okay.
Did you meet your current partner in the league?
Yeah, so our teams played each other. And so it was one of those situations where, we had played the team and we all went out to get a bite after. And, we would just talk and, found that there was a growing interest, attraction there. And at the beginning, it was a lot of fun because there was a lot of flirting / competitive play against each other.
But isn't there more to this story?
I don't know. What did I tell you?
Something happened on the field, right? I feel like you were like, our first kiss was right over there or something. You're holding out that story for the podcast listeners? That's not fair.
Oh, man. All right. All right. So, no, that was, yeah. So I haven't held anything back. I think that what you're thinking of is as we got to know each other and hang out more, there was one time where I think, some people on my team had joined some people on her team to go out after a game. And we were texting each other across the table and was like, you want to get out of here? And I was like, yeah, so we went and we decided to go back to the softball field and we're just kind of walking and hanging out. And yeah, our first kiss was actually at the softball field. The softball fields were played at Sheldon Fields in Northampton they're just so tied into my personal experience here in the Valley and because all our games are played there, really tied in and connected with the league. And to have our first kiss at the softball field was pretty special to me. But, there's a couple that got married at the softball fields.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it what is talked about in the documentary or
yes,
a different?
Yes.
Yeah.
And these are two women that I've known for as long as I've played in the league. They decided that, they thought it would be really special for them to get legally married at the softball field, to have their friends and teammates and family members and sat on the bleachers, and they built a little trellis over home plate. And so it's a space that's not just personally significant to me, but I think to many others. And I would totally get married at the softball field.
Thanks for listening to Cruising. If you like this episode, please consider leaving us a 5-star review. It really helps others discover our podcast. Cruising is produced by a small but mighty team of 3 queer women, Rachel Karp, Jen McGinnity, and me, your host and editor, Sarah Gabrielli. Our theme song is by Joey Freeman. You can support us at buymeacoffee.com/cruisingpod. Follow us on social media at cruisingpod, on Substack, cruisingpod.substack.com, and at our website, www.cruisingpod.com.
Hi, this is Rob Benedict.
And I am Richard Spate. We were both on a little show you might know called Supernatural.
It had a pretty good run, 15 seasons, 327 episodes.
And though we have seen, of course, every episode many times, we figured, hey, now that we're wrapped, let's watch it all again.
And we can't do that alone, so we're inviting the cast and crew that made the show along for the ride. We've got writers, producers, composers, directors, and we'll of course have some actors on as well, including some certain guys that played some certain pretty iconic brothers.
It was kind of a little bit of a left field choice in the best way possible.
The note from Kripke was, he's great, we love him, but we're looking for like a really intelligent Duchovny type.
With 15 seasons to explore, it's going to be the road trip of several lifetimes. So please join us and subscribe to Supernatural then and now.
For 8 years, we've been asking the same question over and over again. How did this happen? My name's Mandy.
And I'm Melissa, and we're the hosts of Moms and Mysteries, the true crime podcast with over 55 million downloads.
We're 2 Florida moms who are obsessed with mysteries. Each week, we do deep dives into fascinating true crime stories.
We cover everything from infamous cases like Casey Anthony
to the bizarre and complex crimes right here in our home state, like the shocking murder of FSU professor Dan Markell.
We bring you the facts, but with warmth and wit you'd only get from 2 friends who have been hooked on mysteries since childhood.
Join us for new episodes of Moms and Mysteries every Tuesday and Thursday.
Listen to Moms and Mysteries on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast.